Blessed to be with you, waking up on the right side. Kevin Miller in the morning on KIDO Talk Radio. Thank you all for joining us. KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. And before we get rolling today, I do want to say we've got some exclusive content on our website. We were working a little late last night. We had a chance to go take a look at the new Blue. So if you want some in-depth color photos, some video from the new Blue on the Albertson Stadium floor, Lyle Field, you can check that out very simply by going to KIDOTalkRadio.com. Also, there's the CBD oil story and the 5 best restaurants to eat if you live or want to go to the city of Boise. A lot going on there. Don't forget, you can always sign up for our free app. It's just going to the App Store. No third-party providers. Just KIDO Talk Radio. You'll see it. Free app alerts. And the newsletter that gives you all the great stories that you might not have had time to catch on your own. Speaking of catching on our own, Tom Pyle joining us from the Institute for Energy Research. Tom, good morning.
Morning, Kevin. How are you?
Not bad. Here we have a day, to quote former President Roosevelt, that will live in infamy. Before we talk about the blessings that we have, the abundance of energy, your thoughts on the 75th anniversary of D-Day, sir?
Well, God bless those brave men and women. We would not be here enjoying the freedoms that we enjoy today, although I'm reminded every day of Ronald Reagan's quote that freedom is not free. And so we've got to keep at it. Every day they try to chip away at our liberties, and we just got to make sure that we remember why this country, what made it so great.
When you speak of our liberties, we certainly seem to take those for granted these days when we have some political candidates, some people embracing socialism. And, Tom, I'm sure you get out when you're not working all the time. Me, I live for the job, to go to church, and to watch a thing the old people call television. And it was just announced that the HBO documentary or docudrama Chernobyl was the highest-rated television program of all time, just came out. And in it, as you just talked about, it was a look inside the old Soviet Union where they didn't have anywhere near the freedoms that we've had in America for over 200 years. We do seem to take that for granted.
Yeah, you bet. And, it's funny because in the lurch towards socialism, which, I think is a function of the generation today, just not having experienced the things that we have, the remembering, what the Soviet Union was about and what it represented. It's very easy to wax nostalgic about getting a lot of free stuff, but that free stuff comes with a significant cost.
It does. I mean, and for people that haven't seen it, you have this huge disaster and they want to evacuate people and they say, nope, we're not going to do that because that would leave a bad impression, never mind the dangers. Or if you speak out, and Tom, sometimes this happens on social media, well, at least they don't send a person to escort you to a room where you can sit by yourself for a while. You do get censored. So freedom is something that needs to be fought for day in and day out. It's amazing. Maybe it's coincidence how President Trump has pretty much transformed our entire outlook on energy and specifically being energy independent.
Yeah, I mean, it's more like energy realism. We've been living in this utopian fantasy that somehow we can magically transform our energy, the energy that we use currently, into basically what it comes down to for the Greens and the left and the socialist Democrats is wind, solar, and batteries. And, it's just not realistic. It's expensive. And we have been paying already more for electricity as a result. So, we're working hard to inject some realism, just as President Trump has embraced the energy resources, the natural resources we have, because he knows just how important that is for economic opportunities for each and every single one of us.
Indeed, and yet you have people wanting to get rid of coal, get rid of fossil fuels, the president now calling it freedom fuels, if you will, from the White House. Why? And the former president, he had a war on coal.
You bet he did. He had a war on coal and oil and natural gas, although he, to his credit, he did allow some limited exports of liquefied natural gas under his watch, nowhere near to the level that President Trump has done. And the Freedom fuel, if you think about it, is really appropriate because we are exporting these resources to places where, going back to the Soviet Union, but now Russia, where Russia controls 100% of the energy supply for a large swath of Eastern Europe. Talk about being dependent on a petro-dictator, basically, who has, when he has felt it for his geopolitical needs, he has shut down the gas in places like Ukraine in the winter. That's insecurity to a massive T.
Indeed. Tom Powell joining us from the Institute for Energy Research. How dangerous is the Green New Deal or the New Green Deal or whatever you want to call it?
Well, in and of itself, it's laughable. It proposes that that the federal government basically take over the economy, which through energy. It's massively expensive. It defies the laws of physics in a lot of cases. But the real danger to the Green New Deal is this concept of politicians actively misleading voters into thinking that these things are realistic or at a minimum wouldn't cause significant disruptions in our lives. And the other problem that it causes is it creates this sort of, who thought 5 years ago, for example, pipelines would be controversial, safest form of transportation of these resources. And yet we now have a public that thinks that they're not safe. And so the Greens and the left have done a very good job of creating scares, sort of creating these crises that just frankly don't exist.
When we take a look at the frustrating gas prices, though, everybody's frustrated. In Idaho, we have some of the highest in the country because, well, we have one pipeline in and no refineries and some trucks that drive in from Montana. What would it take to have a greater commitment of infrastructure for Intermountain states like Idaho to have more affordable energy, or is that a pipe dream?
Well, I hope it's not a pipe dream. North Dakota's not that far away. They're talking about building a refinery there. Fortunately, you live in a state that has some sanity. We call the red states the freedom states. It's a challenge logistically for you guys in terms of markets, but at the end of the day, we're just simply not building the capacity, the infrastructure to move the oil and coal and natural gas that we are blessed with fast enough to keep up with the production. And hopefully eventually it'll catch up, and that'll certainly help with that situation.
Tom, let's get back to where do we go from here? Again, we go back to the basic question. If we're exporting fuel and such, why are our fuel prices collectively across the country too high? Are we ever going to see an innovation where we don't have to switch over from the winter blend to the spring blend? We're talking about self-driving cars. You'd think we'd come up with a blend that would work all the time.
Well, unfortunately, we are so now intertwined in the blending and the octanes, and the ethanol mandate has been a big contributor to the increases in the cost of gasoline. That I don't see a relief there. What I see is if we continue to produce these resources at the record pace that we are, the biggest chunk of a gallon of gas, quite simply, is the cost of the oil. That if we can continue to produce these resources and generate more of them, hopefully that'll lower the price of a barrel of crude, and that will respond accordingly. In addition, we got to fight against these desires by politicians to increase our gas taxes.
Right.
As you know, a big chunk of a gallon of gas is also in state and federal taxes. And I'd be fine paying a gas tax if the politicians would stop siphoning the money away from roads and into their little pet projects.
Finally, when we take a look at years ago, you had the OPEC oil embargo, the lines and such. It's amazing how far we've come. What about and maybe this is outside your jurisdiction, the stability of getting your oil from other places besides America?
Well, if you think about this, there's a real-world example of this in Venezuela and Alberta, Canada. we depend on Venezuelan and crude from Alberta for our refineries, ironically, because we retooled our refineries to take that heavier, higher sulfur content crude oil. And golly, if we had built the Keystone Pipeline by now, if the environmentalists and the politicians that have been blocking it for years and judges, we would be perfectly fine with a stable source of oil from our good friends in Canada versus relying on socialists like Maduro. So that's a real-world example. We got to get that Keystone Pipeline built, because once we do, with the amount of oil that we're producing here domestically, combine it with that Alberta crude, we won't ever need Venezuela again, and wow, wouldn't that be something?
It would. Tom, people want more information. What can they do?
Institute for Energy Research.org. It's a little bit of a mouthful, but come on over and sign up for all of our newsletters. You'll get the real deal, the real facts about energy.
Tom Pyle, we appreciate you. Thank you for joining us here in Idaho. Hope to see you soon.
You bet.
Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Our time is 6:17. Coming up, remembering the liberators of the world. We're going to do something a little differently today. Obviously, we will take your calls about the issues that matter to you. But none issue bigger today than the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Europe, the invasion of Normandy, the invaders, right? You know, we're blessed because, a lot of us are talking about the Garth Brooks concert, Blake Shelton coming to town. Oh, it's going to be big. But here you have people in their 90s. You have a 95, 97-year-old former airborne soldier actually parachuted today and did the same jump that he did many years ago. But D-Day, 75 years ago, what would have happened if we had lost, right? Well, I'd love to hear from you. And if there is another audience in radio that is more appreciative than to the members of our servicemen, I don't know what is. So I'd like to hear from you. We'll hear from President Trump as well. If you go to my Facebook page, a great story from Fox News, D-Day Deception, how phantom armies and fake information helped win the Battle of Normandy. And by the way, I want to say hi to my friend Alvis, who's one of the Elvises at Boise State. He listens to this program. He loves Donald Trump. So if he's listening, hello, and reach out to me on Facebook. We look forward to having you guys in studio soon. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio, remembering Normandy. World War II veterans and military members, along with President Trump and leaders of the world, attended a service in Normandy, France, dedicating a memorial to the soldiers who lost their lives during the D-Day invasion 75 years ago today.
As the sun rises over Ver-sur-Mer, we gather to commemorate the events of 75 years ago. We give thanks for those who served by land, sea, and air in the armed forces or auxiliary organizations.
As we get up, maybe we had a good night's sleep. Maybe we did not. We look at our own struggles. And sometimes when something goes wrong, like when the computer goes wrong, or we're stuck in traffic, or someone's being annoying, we should thank the Lord for those brave men, 17, 18, 19, just kids that went and liberated the world. Let me share with you. I was looking at just a couple of clips, and you had these people interviewing a local TV station from somewhere. But the quote from the veteran when he said this, let's take a listen.
What a sacrifice, but what a monumental victory. So I've been asking some veterans, in your own words, how significant is D-Day?
We saved the world. We saved the world from tyranny.
16 million Americans served our country during World War II, and 97% of them are gone. So I think it's up to us now to keep this history alive.
So how do we mark such a monumental time in history and at the same time pay it the appropriate respect? Well, Jeannie and I will be going to France, actually traveling to Normandy to broadcast live.
And there we have it. Glad for them. I was hoping for more veterans But America, you know, you look at that greatest generation, as Tom Brokaw talked about, 97% of them gone. 97% of them gone. Most of us grew up reading about World War II in the history books, never having to worry about the Nazis coming here. Now, people today could say if that happened, we would probably try and Twitter them to death. No, that was a different world. It was a world before electronics. Most people got their news from the radio and newspapers. And here you have people, you know, you don't have to watch Saving Private Ryan. Maybe we do, to understand what those people faced. Drowning, jumping out of airplanes, fighting an unbeatable force. And when people talk about America being bad and horrific, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Congresswoman Tlaib or Congresswoman Omar, do they have any idea the greatness of those men who left their wives, who left their mamas and their daddies and their brothers and their sisters to liberate the world against National Socialism? That's where you come in. At 580-5436, 580-KIDO. I'd like to get your thoughts on the 75th anniversary of Normandy. And if you ever get a chance to go to the World War II Memorial, you know, you have every monument to every state, but at the opening of it is just a perfect plaque panel, call it what you will, that defines that generation. And they talk about the location. It's between the Washington and Lincoln Memorial, and they say in between, and I'm paraphrasing, I can't do it justice, in between the monuments honoring the founder of our great nation, George Washington, and the protector of our union, Abraham Lincoln. Here we have a memorial to average, ordinary men and women that did extraordinary things to save the world from fascism. Most of us, it'll be words. They lived in a different realm. It was called action. Before we get to Pete Mountain Home, let's get you to work safely and on time. 627 KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Traffic and weather together. Good morning, Dave. And I'm Kevin Miller in the morning. Your thoughts on the 75th anniversary of D-Day. Pete, good morning.
Good morning, Kevin. I don't know. It's hard to say how much we owe those people, the men that went ashore there. I know my dad served in Europe in World War II. But his brother, his sisters, our whole family. Heck, my brother was in the Air Force. I was in the Army. That's what you did in my family. And I would like also to point out just the tragic death of that member of the 116th Cav down at Fort Irwin. The men and women in the military today, you know, oh, well, it's just training. Hey, they all signed the blank check, every single one of them. And if you want to know a little bit, if you want to see a little bit of what World War II was actually like, you go on the internet and type in Battle Hymn of the Republic and World War II video. And there are actual films, color film from World War II, including some of the videos of the actual landing at Normandy with the Battle Hymn of the Republic playing. And that's really an incredible video. I strongly recommend it. And anyway, I just want to say thank you to my fellow veterans, thank you to the men and women who are serving today, and thank you to the greatest generation. Thank you.
Pete, we appreciate you. God bless.
God bless you.
Very emotional, and that's really what we're asking for today, to honor those who served. And by the way, Pete's right about the member of the 116th who was tragically killed in training. Most of us, well, maybe not most of us, because there are much more veterans now, but when most of us were in the military, at least when I was in the military for a very brief time, training was your greatest concern. Just because it's training doesn't mean that it's safe. The risks are taken out of things, but things can happen. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Coming up next, one city really loses it when it comes to sanity. And oh yeah, that city's in California. Plus, measles have finally come to the Gem State. A lot going on this morning. Can't wait to hear what you have to say. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Good morning, Maggie.
75 years ago, hundreds of thousands of young soldiers, sailors, and airmen left these shores in the cause of freedom.
Our sons, pride of our nation, this day have set upon a mighty endeavor, a struggle to preserve our republic, our religion, and our civilization, and to set free a suffering humanity.
It is with humility and pleasure, on behalf of the entire country, indeed the whole free world, that I say to you all, thank you.
The enemy is strong. He may hurl back our forces, but we shall return again and again.
75 years ago, the liberation of Europe began. Joining us now, Fox News Radio's Simon Owen, live from London on KIDO Talk Radio. Simon, good morning.
Morning, Kevin.
So we have the pomp, the circumstances, but how do you describe 75 years since the Allies vowed to reclaim and liberate Europe?
Yes, I'm actually speaking to you this morning from the Normandy American Cemetery in northern France, which is a site located on a cliff overlooking Omaha Beach, one of the 5 beaches where the D-Day landings took place. It is a place that is filled with 9,000 plus grave markers for American servicemen, most of whom died either on D-Day or in the campaign that followed. These pristine, sparkling white crosses and stars of David arranged precisely in lines on a very neatly cut grass. And the sun is shining today and it lights the grave markers up. There has been a commemoration ceremony here in the past couple of hours. President Trump was here. President Macron of France was here. But perhaps more importantly, around 35 American D-Day veterans were also here. And 75 years later, these are men in their 90s. Some of them are over 100. President Trump paid tribute. He said, "You are among the greatest Americans who will ever live. You are the pride of our nation." And President Macron said he bows down before the veterans' bravery. He said, "We know what we owe you, our freedom."
Simon Owen, live at Normandy Beach, KIDO Talk Radio from Fox News Radio. Simon, the mood there when you see those 30-some Americans, and you as a journalist, you're paid to cover things. Can you continue to describe just how the big the cliffs are and the number of crosses and the beach itself?
Well, the crosses to start with stretch kind of as far as the eye can see from certain points in the cemetery. 9,000. I think it's 9,388. That's a lot of graves, and they are attended to meticulously. And then in the horizon, you've got the blue today with the weather bright, the blue of the English Channel from where these ships sailed across. And yeah, it's a bluff, it's a cliff, and it reminds you that when these ships, boats got ashore, that was just part one of this death-defying job. There was then the small matter for a lot of these men of scaling a cliff with Germans, Nazi Germany, shooting down on you. But I've spent the past couple of days with some of these veterans who've traveled over from the United States. They have been getting, I think you could call it a rock star reception. Lots of people wanting to talk to them, speak to them, listen to them, hear what they've got to say. And for some of them, this is the first time they've been back to Normandy in 75 years. So the first time that they've set foot on, for instance, Omaha Beach, I spoke to one man standing on the beach. That was the first time he'd been on there since he was climbing ashore on D-Day. And they speak very vividly about the memories they have of that day. You know, one man was saying about how on the boat coming over, he said everyone was in good spirits, even though he said we'd been warned there could be 20% casualties, but no one thinks they're going to be the casualty. But when we saw the activity as we were going in, then it changed. You weren't that confident. You couldn't see anything but smoke and flame and things flying up in the air. And for a lot of these men, they do have these very vivid memories, more vivid, I would venture, than a lot of things that have occurred in their life since then. But for a lot of them, they don't want these memories still to be there. And I spoke to one man, he said, I spent 50 years trying to forget that war.
Simon Owen joining us from Normandy. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Simon with Fox News Radio. The idea that those grounds are so meticulously taken care of, and it resonates today with the people there. Obviously, they haven't forgotten.
Yes, and that was the gist of the French president's speech here today. I've also spoken to some locals here in the past couple of days who talk about their own D-Day adventures. You know, this was Nazi-occupied France at the time, and I spoke to one woman who was saying that her grandmother lived here at the time and gave shelter to a wounded American soldier who needed it. Other Americans will tell you stories about the hospitality they received from the French. Good food was the thing that I think sticks in a lot of people's minds. Fresh bread, hot soup, one of the veterans was saying. And when you're talking about, I think it's easy to forget that D-Day was one day, but then months and months of possibly even more vicious fighting followed as the Allies worked their way inland. And through that time, there were moments of respite, and that was sometimes offered by the French. But yeah, as you walk around this area, particularly around an occasion like this, you see the French flag, but you also see the American flag and the British flag and the Canadian flag. It's not been forgotten.
Simon, we appreciate your reporting. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Kevin.
Our great friend Simon Owen joining us. Let's go to Hank in Boise. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Hank, good morning.
Good morning. I think there's one individual that's never gotten the full recognition for what he did that day. Was Norman Cota, who was the assistant deputy commander of the 29th Division. He basically saved the day on Omaha Beach when most of the 118th Regiment on Dog Green, which was that sector of the beach, were practically wiped out. The non-coms were killed. The junior officers were killed. Cota came up in the second wave, got those people under heavy fire, got those people organized, got them up and let them off of the draw. He exposed himself repeatedly, walking up and down that line to gunfire. Miraculously wasn't hit. Got him up to Villeville and saved the day. And another person who also I think deserves recognition is Earl Ray Rudder, who basically the character Henry Miller in Saving Private Ryan, who Tom Hanks played, was based on, was another figure who basically saved the day with the Rangers on another sector of the beach. And these two individuals never got the full recognition. They gave Teddy Roosevelt in Utah a Medal of Honor. I think that what Cota did that day was even more significant, and he actually deserves a full medal. I think I'm not taking away from Roosevelt's heroism. He definitely was a hero, but I think politics was involved in this, and I think the time has come that Cota gets his recognition. He was played by Robert Mitchum, by the way, in The Longest Day, but he's never gotten the full recognition because what he did was even more dramatic than what was shown on the movie The Longest Day. So I'll leave it at that.
Well, before you go, though, Hank, what does this mean to you?
Well, I'll tell you what, I've read this campaign for a number of years, and I've been amazed at some of the leadership of a lot of the people involved. Like you talk about John Howard, the parachuters who held that bridge, and against long odds, and you look at some of the actions of these people, it's miraculous. Actually, if It was, the whole thing hung on a shoestring. We were lucky that the Germans did not have we more or less had decimated the German Luftwaffe, because if the Luftwaffe was at strength in 1943 or earlier in the war, there'd been no way we could have made those landings. I mean,
well, and then we had the great fake out. Hitler thought we were going to be somewhere else, and it was a tribute to the deception there that Normandy, as fortified as it was, could have been even more fortified by the Germans.
Well, that's, of course, like dictators, they always want power in their own hands. He took operational control of the armor away from Rundstedt and Rommel, which was a terrible mistake, because they had to clear everything with him over at headquarters, which meant hours delay, and it was crucial for the Germans to get those tanks onto the beaches, basically stop the invasion. And they had, and the Fuhrer, by having the Fuhrer make the decision himself, it caused a crucial delay, which was another factor in saving the day for us.
It did. Hank, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Now, here we have Fox's Greg Paltuk, who had a chance to talk to an actual veteran of Normandy.
The first ones in on June 6, 1944, those U.S. paratroopers, they tried to catch the enemy unaware. Instead, their planes ran into a massive barrage of gunfire, one of those getting ready to jump out of the plane into this living hell. Then 19-year-old Eugene Deibler. Take a listen of how he felt then.
We probably had about 10 more minutes of flight, maybe 12.
So anti-aircraft fire all around?
Yeah. And machine gun fire, you could see the tracers coming up,
So for about 10 minutes, you're flying through this in an airplane.
And we're saying, let's get the hell out of this plane.
Let's get the hell out of this plane. Our friend Doug in Mountain Home joins us now on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Doug.
Good morning, Kevin. Yeah, this is, excuse me, it is an emotional day. My dad, he's gone. And a really good friend of mine, Charlie Van Sickle, they're gone. They all fought over there. My dad was in the Navy on a carrier, was a machine gunner in one of them torpedo planes, did 56 missions. I got his flight logbook. 3 deck crashes. And then this country forgets them. They don't even teach it in the schools. Where is this country at in our leadership? I don't know. You ever watch the movie, that series Band of Brothers, Kevin?
Oh, that's a great one.
Have you? I just can't believe the first time I watched it. I bet I've watched it 5, 6 times. The integrity of them people. The integrity of this country was something else.
Yeah, and I, after I saw that, I went out and bought the book, and, I've thumbed through it a few times, but, they were too good to be true.
Yeah.
But they were true.
But that's how this country was back then.
I agree.
And they saved us, they saved us from speaking Japanese, and German. And that's what I'm seeing a little bit more over there in Europe now that they're starting to realize this. Some of the leaders, where they're realizing that this country came over there and died, people, for freedom of this whole world. They died. They gave up their lives. And you guys want to run to socialism?
And Doug, they didn't give up their lives when they were our age. They gave up their lives when they had the rest of their lives to look forward to.
That's right. If you watch the end, that last number 10 disc on that Band of Brothers, when them boys are together at one of their reunions, one of their last, matter of fact, I think it was the last reunion. And one of them boys said that. He was talking to his daughter. They went over there and to the memorial site, and he told her, he said, these were lives that were never lived. 18, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds that never got to have a family. I got to go. God bless you guys.
God bless you, Doug. R&R joins us now to talk about D-Day. Good morning, R&R.
Good morning. I'll get through this. My father was born in 2009 and did not have to serve, but I have 3 decorated uncles in Korea. And it just satisfies me to know I've seen the crosses. I've been all over Washington, D.C. and Annapolis, and it's as Doug was saying, those beautiful men, especially the parents who gave their sons in sacrifice. And we continue to do it all the way since the War of 1812. And parents who give up their children, there's a great deal of sadness, but a great deal of respect for me. And D-Day will not go by unannounced or unappreciated because of you and Ray. So thank you very much for that tribute this morning.
Thank you, R&R. God bless. More coming up next. Kevin Miller taking your calls, remembering D-Day, our great heroes. What would you like to say to them? Don't hesitate. Join us now. Kevin Miller on your home for Hannity, KIDO Talk Radio. Blessed to be with you, waking up on the right side, remembering the liberation of Europe. Today, Normandy, 75 years ago. The war to liberate and to save mankind. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio, traffic and weather together. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Good morning, Dave.